A good product, but crappy creative versus crappy product, good creative. Which one does better?
I would say over time.
Like take us to the end, for like a better way to put it.
What's getting clicked on? If people aren't searching for something and therefore not getting clicked.
Is there a budget that you say, if you don't have this much budget to test and do anything, you're throwing money away?
If you don't have at least then probably you shouldn't get started. There are exceptions to that.
John Horn is the Chief Executive Officer at Stub Group, a premier Google partner, ranked by Google in the top 1% of all Google partners worldwide for performance and customer care.
Are there some businesses where Google ads don't make as much sense because the cost per click isn't going to get them to what they have because their product is too low of a cost?
100%, yeah.
There are a lot of people who are going to be over and testing and playing in these other areas, so it opens up maybe more competitive rates in Google, or do you think we'd see that impact at all?
That's a great question. Google is going through a significant change right now, but they're trying to figure out.
All right, now the time travel question. If you could go back in time, is there any particular advice you would give yourself?
Hire slow, fire fast.
Welcome, John.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, excited here. I got to start off with, this whole 1% of Google partners globally. That's pretty crazy. What the heck sets your approach apart from others? How are you there in this elite group?
Yeah, so Google has a number of things that they're looking at when they're kind of, rating the partners they work with. Specifically, when they talk about partners, in this context, they're talking generally about, agencies, people who are helping other advertisers spend money through Google. And so they're looking at various things like product adoption. So how are we using the various channels that Google has? Because Google's beyond much more than just search. They have YouTube, they have their display network, they have Gmail, so many places where you can be leveraging advertising. They want to see that we're really making good use of their ecosystem on behalf of our clients. They want to see that we're retaining, clients, retaining business for them, which also means we're doing a good job for our clients. They want to see, growth over time in ad spend, which obviously for them it's good because it means more money. But it's also a signal of, hey, if our clients are spending more money, that means they're seeing value in the work we're doing, and so they're doubling down their investments. And then there's other things like just health of accounts. Are we following Google's best practices? Are we tracking conversion properly? Lots of different things that kind of play into that metric that they look at.
Nice. And what led to Stub Group?
Yeah, well, Stub Group. So we started a little over a decade ago, and it was started by two guys. One of them happens to be my brother, so that's how I initially got introduced to Stub Group.
Yep.
And we all came from the marketing, kind of different marketing backgrounds, different marketing areas. So my brother and his partner specifically, they started Stub Group, kind of seeing this trend, which was not a new trend, but a continually developing trend of so many businesses moving from traditional marketing advertising into the digital space. Google was not new a decade ago, but certainly was new to a lot of people, and a lot of businesses needed help just navigating this online advertising world. And so that was kind of the beginning of Stub Group was, hey, let's provide a service to these businesses who need help stewarding their ad spend, stewarding their budgets. And so we jumped in, we figured out how Google Ads works and other platforms, and leveraged that to both grow our own business as well as grow our clients' businesses, and then kind of ramped up the team and client base from there.
Wow.
And is the focus primarily Google? Like you guys dabble in Facebook, Meta, or Twitter X, or TikTok?
Yeah, so historically, Google has been the top channel we use for our clients, but we also use all the other channels you mentioned: Meta ads, X ads, LinkedIn, etc. And we're also in the process of really expanding some of the other marketing services we offer as well, getting beyond just the paid side of things, as businesses just need more help and want their vendors to be more helpful to them, or I should say maybe streamline some of the services that they're able to access through single vendor.
So I'm curious, in over the years, how has Google Ads evolved, and what's it look like in your opinion going forward, especially as the ChatGPTs of the world and other things start to jump in there? And I know that Google's pursuing their own, versions of that as well, but I'm just curious to just hear a little bit of the evolution and where you see it going.
Yeah, so really Google, used to be a bit of the wild, wild west in terms of if you really knew what you're doing, you could make just tremendous amounts of money because there was lower competition. If you could, corner the market on particular keywords, particular service, you could own the market for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, it's definitely matured in that Google is the first place most advertisers go in the digital area to start advertising. So it's no longer the Wild West. There is it's a very mature platform with a lot of advertisers, but it can still be a very effective platform because it is the place that most of us go to for answers to our problems, for finding solutions. If we need a service, a product, often Google is the first place you go. And so inherently, if you're a business trying to sell things or provide services, provide information, Google is where you can reach the most people that you know are looking for what you sell. Now, like you mentioned, with things like ChatGPT, this is the first time I say in a long time that Google really has a legitimate threat to their monopoly on how people find information online.
Yeah.
And that is, more and more people are going to things like ChatGPT and starting their searches and ending their searches often there.
Mm-hmm.
From a market share perspective, those tools still have right now a very low market share. I think
Sure.
the last study I saw relative to ChatGPT was that it might have maybe a 5% share of search traffic, which is low, obviously, but that was also up from I think like 1% earlier in last year. And so from just a trajectory standpoint, that is a very, very, very rapid growth. I think looking to the future, I think that early adopters, people who are more tech savvy, more on top of new things, will be leveraging a lot of tools beyond Google, like ChatGPT, like Perplexity, things like that. And Google's definitely going to lose some market share there. I think in the short term, Google's probably not going to lose a lot of market share to just the average consumer who doesn't really have time to worry about those things and who's just kind of already bought in. Google is where I go. That's where I do my searches. And so I think it's going to take a while to change habits for just the average consumer. But over time, if Google is not able to, really change how it operates and compete better with things like ChatGPT, then they will get on a slippery slope. And at some point, they will lose the monopoly that they essentially have at this point.
Yeah. Very interesting. I wonder, do you think that creates some opportunities though on Google in terms of there are a lot of people who are going to be over and testing and playing in these other areas. So it opens up maybe more competitive rates in Google, or do you think we'd see that impact at all?
That's a great question. I don't think we'll see most advertisers really move budget away from Google to a significant extent until they see diminishing returns on Google.
Yeah, okay.
I think they'll allocate, maybe additional budget for testing other platforms. But if they think it's working well on Google, I don't see them pulling it away. I do, however, see opportunities in that Google is going through a significant change right now where they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we deal with these things? Obviously, the introduction of AI overviews into the search engine result pages, it's probably the biggest consumer facing change they've made in a long time, where now you go on Google, you search for something, and many times Google's trying to answer that question right away. And then sure, they have links that source you to where they're pulling that information from, but they're really trying to be the source right on that search engine results page. And so a big opportunity for advertisers is going to be, how is Google going to look to monetize that?
Right.
They have announced they're going to bring ads to that, but exactly how that's going to work, what that's going to look like, is still very nebulous at this point. And so that's something we're really very closely monitoring is, all right, how are we going to be able to leverage the AI overview placement and things like that on behalf of our advertisers? And sure
I would say as a consumer, when Google introduced the Gemini snippet at the top of your search result, I went back and started using Google more again. I use ChatGPT daily, but I find myself just falling back into old habits. Because if I'm looking for something, say, oh, what's the address of this location? Google. I haven't adjusted my habits yet, but new habits have formed with ChatGPT, because my new habits with ChatGPT are generate me something new. And that's where I go. So it'll be interesting to see how it all evolves, and if I'm an exception or I'm part of the more mass, how everybody is kind of adopting to these things.
And I think there's that component too of I'm going to put you in this category, Artin. Will it be an old versus young? Like, in other words, kind of like, I think about our kids today, it's like YouTube and all that. It's like, forget streaming elsewhere. It's going to be really interesting to see how people come in trained in that sort of fashion for information.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. My son, he used to have this, always would say, ask Siri. Like if he had any questions,
No,
I'm
it
like,
says ask
I'm not
ChatGPT.
sure. Ask Siri. He's now changed it. He doesn't say ask Siri anymore. He's like, I don't like Siri. The answers are not as good. Ask ChatGPT. And now he calls it Chad. He's like, ask Chad.
That's Chad. Yeah. That's awesome. It'd be interesting. Yeah. To see. It's pretty funny though. Even now as an Apple ask ChatGPT too. Is it because aren't they now integrated in that way? So they're like, we're with you. John, I'm curious here, with Google ads and, a lot of businesses trying, not all of them have the same level of success. And I'm curious, what do you see? Is there a pattern that you see with those who are less successful with Google ads?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of things, good and bad that we see happen. I would say if we're going to look at things of, let's say maybe what's one of the biggest mistakes that advertisers make, I'm going to say it's actually outside of the ads platform. It's not, they're running campaigns wrong or things like that. All that happens often. It's They are relying on advertising to kind of be the magic bullet to fix their business's issues. And we see this time and time again. Businesses come to us like, okay, well, we need you to fix our problem. We're going to run ads. It's going to make us incredibly successful. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. You need to have a good offer that has product market fit, that people are interested in, that's competitive in the marketplace. And then through advertising, you can get that out to lots of people. You can pour fuel on your fire. You can get people into your funnel, whatever it is. But if you don't have something they're interested in to begin with, or if you have bad processes, which are then resulting in bad reviews online. And so people click your ads and then they look for your reviews and they see, oh, no, I don't want to work with these people. Those are, I would say, some of the biggest mistakes that we see where businesses fail in their advertising is forgetting the rest of the business that goes with it.
Yeah. That makes me wonder actually there, going back to testing a product, I wonder if for somebody to use Google ads to test the product, see whether or not people are actually interested in that way. Just as, I know sometimes we play in that space. So
yeah, absolutely. That can be very valid because you can get traffic very quickly and get results and see if you do have a product market fit, just based upon, whether people buy after clicking through your ads.
Are there some businesses where Google ads don't make as much sense because they're, the cost per click, for lack of a better way to put it, correct me if any of my language is wrong here, just isn't going to get them to what they have because their product is too low of a cost?
100%. Yeah. And cost per click is exactly the right terminology. Yeah. If you're selling, very low margin products, let's say you're selling, umbrellas and, you're selling them for $5, you make $1 off of that. Unless you're Amazon where you're just going for market share and always show up, you're not going to have a viable path on Google ads because this is going to cost you way too much to acquire customers. Okay. And so we see this a lot in the e-commerce space where when we're talking to our commerce clients, we look at a lot of things like, okay, what's your average order value and what's your customer lifetime? Because your customer lifetime value, I should say. Because sometimes, maybe you have a relatively low or average order value, but if you have people coming back time and time again, then it might be cost effective to spend more to acquire that customer than even the value of their first purchase. But if they're going to make 10 more purchases over the next 2 years, then you could end up making a lot of money from them. And so you got to look at those things. There's some areas where there's also just not enough people searching for things, really. Good example would be, well, there's lots of examples. Let's say a fashion brand. You come out with a really cool clothing collection. You've got some fantastic hoodies, some fantastic tees. But with Google Ads, really, if you go after people searching for hoodies or for tees, it's too crowded in the marketplace. It's too expensive. You're not going to be able to stand out. Whereas maybe something like, Meta ads, or maybe even YouTube, where you can show off your products and tap into that visual side of things.
Okay.
You might have opportunity there.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So then I'm curious actually, and I say this because this is a space that I play in for vacation rentals. My thought on this for a while here has been, all right, well, you've got the Airbnbs, the VRBOs, and the local property management companies that are likely outbidding most. So if you only got a small, a single property or something like that, and your chances are a lot lower, they're going to get it, probably not as worthwhile. But would you say that's solid or poor thinking?
No, I would say that's solid logic. Yeah, the way I would look at that is it's unlikely. So I mean, you'll probably be able to get traffic,
Yeah.
very likely. But when you look at what your conversion rate's probably going to be on the traffic coming in versus what it's going to cost when you're competing, like you said, with the Airbnbs, the VRBOs, the local property management companies, it's not likely that you're going to end up being able to have a profitable, cost per booking.
Okay.
Unless you can kind of add some scale to it potentially, where it's like, hey, I've got multiple houses, multiple locations, and I'm, getting people who might come back year in, year out, that kind of thing, maybe.
Sure.
But it's tricky.
Okay. And that fits into what you were saying before about, how you're fitting them into that long-term customer value to it. Yeah. So you had something out there where you had mentioned, hopefully I don't get this wrong, about the importance of aligning ad strategy with unique business goals. And if I've got that correct, I'm curious to just kind of hear more about that, what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. So the goals, really, a conversation we often have with our clients is, what do you define as success? Because sometimes what they're defining as success can be very different than what we initially think of as success. And it's really important that we get aligned on that. A good example would be we've got a client where they're a really cool e-commerce brand, making good money, and we've had a lot of back and forth with them about what their goals are, because they're kind of initially have been focused on, okay, what's the return on ad spend in our account? We need to hit X amount of return on ad spend. And so it sounds like, okay, that's a good goal. They know their margins, etc. We hit X return on ad spend, they're making money, awesome. But as we dug into things further with them, we looked and said, well, hey, you have a super high rate of returning customers, but you're not getting enough new customers in the door to really be kind of feeding your machine to keep that going. And you're going to eventually tap out your existing customer base and have issues. And so we've been working on kind of shifting what our goal is with them from initial return on ad spend to cost per new customer acquisition. Again, looking at that lifetime value. And because by looking at the lifetime value, we're able to say, like, hey, a new customer, you should make like $250 in profit over the lifetime from this customer. But if their initial order is only, $70 of value, and you're saying we need a 3x ROAS, we could only afford to spend, $30, $35 to get that new customer. Whereas if we look bigger picture, and by doing that, we're really limited in how many new customers we can get. But if we look bigger picture and say you're making $250 of lifetime this customer, well, we could spend $50 to acquire a new customer. You're still going to be very, very profitable. And even though the initial ROAS doesn't look great, we're able to get you way more new customers because we can be more aggressive. We have more advertising margin to work with, and we can throw the net wider.
Interesting. That makes sense. I'm taking it back to something I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, and I'm curious on, is for those who do have more limited budgets, is it even possible for them to compete against these larger advertisers? And if so, how do you do that?
It's definitely possible. It requires creativity. It requires finding kind of those gaps in what makes you really competitive compared to the big guys, and what are reasons why someone might choose you over the big guys.
Okay.
So for example, let's say you are an email marketing software company. The big guys are going to be, MailChimp, Constant Contact, etc. And they're going to be throwing tons and tons of money at Google, trying to dominate the market as much as possible. And so probably if you try and go after keywords like best email marketing company, that's going to be incredibly expensive because the big guys are just bidding whatever it takes to show up. Whereas if you identify some kind of niches, let's say, for example, maybe there's an error code that people get when they're working with Constant Contact or MailChimp, and that really frustrates people, and you have a solution for that. And so when they search that error code, you can have a very customized ad saying, tired of, 405 error code, we have the solution. Get them to your landing page, pitch them why you're better than fill in the blank company. And so being really creative like that, you can find those kind of edge cases where they might be completely ignored by the big companies because they're just so big. They don't really care about this little 1% over here. Whereas that 1% to you could be, millions of dollars over time. And so you got to be clever to find those gaps.
Yeah, that's clever. Speaking of creative, John, Do you guys also develop the creative for these ads, or does your client use a separate agency, or maybe you guys subcontract that to another agency to come up with the creative?
Yeah, we do a lot of work on the creative, definitely the copywriting, a lot of imagery as well. We don't do a lot of video in-house, but usually we'll kind of work with clients to help them get video made. And these days, there's lots of options to get videos made that don't require, a $10,000, sit down and with a studio or a team coming out. So we'll kind of help guide them through that process. But other than video, yeah, we do most of the creative.
Got it. So from your perspective, a good product but crappy creative versus crappy product versus good creative, and a good, obviously for both, a good ad strategy. Which one does better?
I would say over time, good product, crappy creative. Because when you have a really good product people care about, you can have such a crappy experience, people will still find a way to get that from you. Whereas if you have, the slickest, coolest possible creative, but then the product's just not there, or even, it looks amazing, but then they get the product and it's terrible, and you start seeing those bad reviews pile up, then you just, over time, it doesn't matter how good your ads are, you're going to not perform well, because people kind of know what they're getting into in the digital age that we live in now. So yeah, good product wins all the time, I would say.
So it works only if you're on a quick money scheme, like get lots of money, sell a bunch of products, and then take off to Bahamas or something.
You can definitely do some scammy things out there. But yeah, if you want to build a long-term business,
yeah, you could tell what Artin's working on now. Something scammy.
Yes, my mind is turning right
now. Going back to what you were saying before about how you might focus in on those areas that they're not dominating in. Does that start working similarly to keywords, where you can have this sort of long tail thing that you own versus a short tail? Meaning, you can be just using the example again of like a vacation rental thing. You might own pet friendly, in Dahlonega, Georgia, whereas the others might just be looking at Dahlonega, Georgia. Or does it work the same way in the Google ads?
It used to work that way back in the day when basically you had to tell Google very explicitly what you wanted. And so you might have these massive lists of, like you said, long tail keywords of misspellings. And hey, if you happen to have this one and your competitor didn't, you kind of win. Nowadays, Google's really broadened how things work, with bringing machine learning, AI, etc., into how they do keyword matching and how they display results. And so you're probably not going to, in many cases, be bidding on a keyword that someone just isn't bidding for. And so really it's more about how relevant and compelling is your ad copy in that area. So if you have that error code example, that's maybe an edge case example. That might be something where it's so creative that Google might not realize that is relevant to someone searching for a broader keyword like email marketing. And so you might be able to get away with showing up on that. But in most cases, you're going to have competitors showing up. But if your ad is laser focused on what the person's pain point is, and then your competitors just have this, generic, oh, we're the best, we are Constant Contact or whatever. Not to pick on Constant Contact, I don't have anything against them. Just an example.
I get it. Yeah, example.
Then, you start getting higher click-through rate because your ad is more compelling. And then Google loves you because higher click-through rate means more money for Google. And so Google prioritizes your ad, gets you more traffic.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Makes sense.
What are top tools that, if somebody has no budget but they want to do all this by themselves, at least to get it going, what are the top tools right now to use to research keywords and anything else that needs to be researched?
Yeah, so Google, they are a completely DIY platform in that anybody can go and start running ads. Now, there's a lot of pitfalls, obviously, they can run into, but it's all very doable in the platform. And they have their own free keyword research tool where you can look up and both get ideas of keywords you should target, as well as very high-level senses of what it may cost per click for various keywords. And so, if you're completely just on a budget trying to do that kind of thing, then I would say a combination of that free tool, and then just literally Googling and looking at things like, okay, what's the autocomplete? When I start typing this, what is Google autocomplete? Because they're doing that because other people are searching for that. and then looking at related searches on pages. So, you search something relevant to your business, you scroll down, Google tells you what other people are searching for. And so you can get really, probably all the keyword research you need out of just doing that. We do a lot of that stuff ourselves when we're doing keyword research for our clients. And then,
on average, like when you guys are doing it for a client, how much time do you spend on launching the first ad or first ad group? Because I think there might be a misconception of how fast or how time consuming this could be. I know personally I've done this a few times as an amateur, and sometimes you're like, man, this takes a long time.
Yes, it can take a long time, especially if you're doing it the right way and trying to avoid all the pitfalls. So usually when a new client comes on board, usually our kind of kickoff process with them is about a 10 to 12 business day process. Some of the things we're doing in that, obviously, are things we talked about, like keyword research, writing ads, and things like that. But that also includes things like getting conversion tracking set up on their website so that we know what happens after people click through ads. And talking through with them, okay, what are your processes? If they're trying to get phone calls, great. Are they actually answering those calls? Getting a call tracking system in place so we know where the calls are coming from. On the e-commerce side of things, figuring out, okay, well, hey, what are your best sellers? Maybe we probably shouldn't advertise every single product you have out of the gate. Let's focus on what's really working for you, kind of hone that down. And so all those types of things are going on during that, again, usually 10 to 12 business day range before we, press launch on the campaigns. And that's when they launch. And that's then the start of the process, in that then we see, okay, what does the data tell us? What do we collect? What's working? What's not working? So that's the beginning of the journey. Is after that kickoff timeline.
And I'm curious, and when you say it's that beginning of the journey, so then what happens next as part of the process? Like, take us to the end, for like a better way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking to see, okay, well, what's getting clicked on? Because you may have campaigns where like, oh, I thought there was going to be more people searching for this than there are. Research only goes as far as it can. So if people aren't searching for something and therefore not getting clicks, then obviously we're going to have to pivot from that. Usually that's not the problem. Usually there's plenty of clicks coming in, and then it's a question of looking at the quality of those clicks. So the first thing we're going to look at is, what are the actual search terms that people are searching to trigger our ads? Because that can be actually quite different than the keywords we've input into Google, because Google gives themselves so much flexibility in how they match things. And so you're looking at things like, okay, these terms are clearly irrelevant. We need to exclude them so we don't waste money on them. Or, oh, interesting, there's these terms over here that are a little bit different than what we expected, but hey, maybe we should pull these into their own ad group or their own ads so we can be more customized to it. Maybe we should create a landing page for this over here because it's a really popular search term that's getting traction. And then obviously seeing what's resulting as well in terms of leads, in terms of sales, whatever the client's goal is. Are we seeing people converting? Because if we're getting what we think is the right traffic, if the search terms are what we want and people are getting to the website, but then they're not turning into customers, then okay, we got to figure out, why is that on the website? Are there technical problems? Is there the offer not clear enough? Is there not enough credibility elements? Figuring out those things, and then
so in that scenario, then are you actually you guys are involved at that level with them? Because I mean, I would assume that some folks will just be like, hey, we ran the ads, have a nice day. But I think your approach obviously sounds like, no, that's the way to do it, because, well, that assures they're still a customer longer term, because that's their goal, is to get to that. So do you spend quite a bit of time actually helping them, what could actually be refining their offer?
We do. And, it definitely depends on the client. Some are very open to feedback. Some have no interest at all. But our best relationships, our longest term clients generally are those clients that view it as a partnership. And
awesome.
I often just describe it when I'm talking to potential customers looking to hire us. I often say, look, we're never going to understand as much about your product and service as you do. And frankly, you're never going to understand as much about the advertising platforms as we do. And so we want to marry those things together and get the best of both worlds. And we want to give you feedback about, hey, this type of landing page generally works way better than what you have right now, based upon all the data we have. Let's test this. And then they're always going to be able to come to us and say, you know what, our ad copy maybe needs to be more nuanced because our customers use these words or think about it in this way. And so there's often lots of that back and forth and testing and nuancing to try and optimize the advertising over time.
So in that case, then is it, however you guys end up pricing and packaging, is it just that that's kind of assumed as part of the onboarding and setup is helping with that side of it, or is that actually packaged as like a separate offering from you guys?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, that's really just assumed as part of the agreement put in place is we're going to be giving guidance on on website stuff, on ideas and ways that we can actually make the advertising campaign successful.
It's great.
John, I mean, everything you talk about, it sounds so thorough and so much review of data and testing and iteration. For someone DIY, they want to do themselves, is there a budget that you say, if you don't have this much budget to test and do anything, you're throwing money away, don't even start?
I would say for the vast majority of businesses, if you don't have at least $2,000 a month to spend on advertising, specifically on Google Ads, we're talking about that, then probably you shouldn't get started. There are exceptions to that. We have clients who are spending less than $1,000 per month, and it's working great for them because they're in a very small geographic area, very specific thing, and it works. But those are the outliers. I'd say usually at least 2,000, and that's just based upon how many clicks you need to collect to really know if it's working or not working and be able to improve over time. Yeah, you might get a lucky thing happen to you from $500 in ad spend, but you're not going to know how to repeat that, generally speaking, and really build a scalable advertising approach without more data.
And just to clarify, that $2,000 is purely ad spend what you're paying to Google.
Exactly.
Not any type of fees to anybody else. Exactly. Okay. Wow, that's an interesting number.
And I'm curious too, naive person asking here, when it comes to talking about Google Ads, and then when we think of YouTube, Google owns YouTube. Are those platforms interchangeable in that scenario? Meaning, will your ads also show up in YouTube, or is it you do operate the two of them separately?
They operate in the same place in that through the same exact interface and account, you can run both search campaigns where you've got text ads showing up on Google as well as YouTube campaigns. There are some campaigns that Google has that kind of span those channels. So they have things like Performance Max campaign is the name of one thing, where if you run that type of campaign, you could be showing up on search, on YouTube, Google's display network, etc. Okay. Generally speaking, so we certainly run that campaign type for some clients. You have to be careful with it for more technical reasons than we could probably get into today, but it can work. It can work well for some clients. Okay. But generally speaking, they are very different channels with different behavior and a different place in the funnel. And so you're going to have, different creative and different approaches. I'm not going to show the same ad, or I can't show the same ad on search, obviously, as I can on YouTube, because one's video, one's text. But also even the calls to action and what I'm saying is probably going to be different because people are in a different headspace in those different areas.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Go ahead, Artin.
I was just going to say and again, going back to a newbie, is there, because there's so much with the platform and you can really get lost in all the data, but is there 3 to 5 of the metrics or KPIs that you say, if you're a newbie, just focus on these. If you get these right and you have at least $2,000 a month, you have a chance of success here? Absolutely.
Yeah. So the top ones I would say, first is conversion rate. So that's what percentage of people who click on your ads take the action you want on your website. Could be filling out a form, placing a phone call, placing an order, etc. But conversion rate is crucial. Then you've got cost per click. So what are you paying on average for traffic? And those are really the two big things that are going to play into what you're paying per lead or order, whatever it is. Because conversion rate, again, controls how many people you paid for, then convert, and then what you pay per person getting to your website obviously impacts that as well. So those two things are super important. Then after that, I would say click-through rate, which is what percentage of people who see your ad are clicking on your ad. And, generally speaking, the higher the better. But that's not as important a metric as the other things, because that, you could have, you could have a very low click-through rate because maybe you're targeting a competitor's name, and most people are not going to click on your ad. But the few who do, maybe you have a really high conversion rate because they want to move away from their competitor, and that's why they were searching. And so that could still be a really effective campaign. So click-through rate is kind of a metric that leads into those most important average cost per click and conversion rate.
And with conversion rate, then and tracking that, is this where Google Analytics comes in? How are people actually measuring their conversion rate?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. So Google Analytics, like you mentioned, is definitely one way, and you can integrate Google Analytics with Google Ads to pull data from Google Analytics into your Google Ads account. You can also track a lot of things with tracking code you can generate from within Google Ads itself. So you can track, form submissions, people placing orders on your website, things like that.
Okay.
And then on the phone call side of things, there are a number of different third-party call tracking platforms that you can use and integrate with Google. Technically, Google has their own version, but it does not work well. So I do not recommend people use it. Third party is a way to go there. And so there's a lot you can do to track those different interactions, both phone calls and on your website, pull it back into your Google Ads account, and then see what's working, what keywords are driving those, what's the cost per lead or the ROAS, and then optimize from there.
Got it. Curious here, and maybe this is going to be a little tricky to do, but if there's one word that you had to say to anybody who's looking to, dive into Google Ads, what word would that be for them?
Ooh, I've never been asked that question. That's a good question. I would say caution.
Okay.
Caution, because it's really easy to spend money with Google. Google makes that very easy. It is very hard to make money off of that ad spend. And so, be cautious.
Yeah. Makes sense. We'll be cautious. And I'm curious also, like for you, as you've gone this route as well, I'm just getting into a little bit of your own background. Because obviously, you seem like a pretty young guy being a CEO at a company. You mentioned kind of how it was founded and stuff like that earlier. But for you, is this kind of what you envision, like for your future? Is this what you want to get into, or did it turn out that you just kind of one thing led to another?
It was a little more of a one thing led to another. I enjoy communication and the idea of, okay, what I can put out into the world, what impact can that have on people? And I didn't initially plan for that to be advertising, but it turns out, hey, that advertising is all about communication. It's about sharing things in a powerful way, in a way that helps people solve problems that they have, fill needs that they have, and ultimately, on behalf of what's being advertised, create value for that business. And so, it's been really cool kind of getting into this world. And one of the very fun things about what I do is that I just get to work with so many different types of businesses. Right. I like to say sometimes every couple of days I find a new way to make money I didn't know existed. There's so many random business models out there, so many niches where I'm like, what? Okay, cool. Well, that makes sense. You're making money and we can connect you to people. So it's a lot of fun to see all the different businesses, see how the good ones operate, see how the bad ones operate, and then try to learn from those things for my own business and try to improve how I work with my team and how we run things here.
Nice. And then for you, or rather for the company now at this point, how are you guys attracting most of your customers at this point? Do they come through a specific channel?
It's a variety of channels. Yeah. So we do our own advertising. We like to say we eat our own dog food. So we do some of our own advertising on Google and other platforms. Referrals, word of mouth from clients we have. There's some interesting areas where we've kind of built up some unique expertise. So we're kind of a leader in the space of Google Ads compliance, of helping people fix issues they may have run into accidentally, because Google has very paranoid policy enforcement approaches to things. And so we get a lot of business from helping people fix those issues and then getting to work with them ongoing. So variety of methods. Always
anybody who gets good at compliance is usually got work coming their way, because nobody ever wants to do that. They just want to be like, just tell me how I'm compliant, and I'll head that route. Interesting. But obviously, as you said, eating your own dog food in that way, is it actually a crowded market on Google to advertise for the support that you guys do, or is it actually not as crowded as one would think?
This is actually another great example of where, niching down can be helpful. So yeah,
Okay.
if you search for best Google Ads agency or whatever, it's incredibly, incredibly competitive.
Yeah.
There are, literally tens of thousands of agencies out there, and lots of them are trying to get business through Google Ads. And so it's very expensive there. But if you can then find some of those unique areas, like we mentioned, Google compliance, where we just have unique knowledge sets and experience and teams that most people don't, then you can really stand out and say, hey, we can get a lot of business coming through here and kind of get those relationships started, because that's a gap that the vast majority of agencies aren't filling and aren't interested in filling.
Okay. Interesting. Are there questions we haven't asked you yet that you're like, oh, people really need to be careful of, or they really should do?
That's a great question. I think we covered a lot of the important ones, like, what are those common mistakes? Yeah, I would just kind of re-emphasize what I said earlier about advertising not being a magic bullet, and about how important it is to have other aspects of your business in a good place, so that you can use advertising to put fuel on that fire. I think that's really important.
Makes sense. All right, now the time travel question. If you could go back in time, and you've got, young John there, is there any particular advice you would give yourself?
I would say from the leadership side of things, I've gotten to work with a lot of people over the years, and it's not new to me, but the idea of, hire fast or hire slow, fire fast is incredibly important when you're building a team. There's certainly been situations where, I love people, I want to see them be successful, I see opportunity for them, but it just keeps dragging on and dragging on, and it's not right to the rest of your team to create these drags. And so it's really important, give people the chance to shine. Certainly, give them the training and support they need. But if it's not working out with them, it's the best decision for them and for you to make that decision very quickly and part ways very quickly.
Yeah, that's good advice. I've experienced the same thing there. It could be tough at times. And some companies people work for, Disney was like this for us, is sometimes it was actually hard to do that. They're, for lack of a better way to put it, we'll say their compliance team was definitely like, well, whereas at Netflix, where I was at afterwards, it's like, you know what, that philosophy is absolutely what they, lived and breathed on a daily basis. They're like, yep, make the call, move on as quickly as you can. How big is the team at Stub Group?
We have around 30 people in that room.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. That's a large team. And with that, are most of the hires, have they come over time pretty regularly, or have you found yourself actually have any specific growth spurts during your time?
Yeah, there's been, I would say probably fairly consistent over time. There's been times where we've kind of tested different models of how we support, working with clients, more team-based, more one-on-one. And so there's sometimes been some spurts of hiring kind of around those things. But generally speaking, it's not, oh, hey, we hired, 10 new people in this month. It's been more gradual over time.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm also curious here, and again, we ask some of these questions just as a lot of our listeners are also, they're aspiring entrepreneurs or looking to build out their own business. So it's always really interesting to get kind of insights of where people have on it. Is there anything for you? Because it sounds like you've pretty much, your training in many ways has been on the job. Here we go. You got to start making these decisions and figuring that out as you go along. Have there been any particular resources that you've pulled upon that you consider really valuable in helping to shape you as both, a leader and a CEO today?
Yeah, definitely the most impactful resources for me have been the founders of the company who started things and who also came from backgrounds, working and leading other companies. And they've been an incredible resource for me, holding my feet to the fire when I'm not making the right decisions, encouraging me, being
That's
a
great.
resource to go to ask questions and just tap into experience that I haven't always at times had the opportunity to build up yet. So
Got it.
that's been
So
one resource.
So some of those original founders, because I know when you mentioned your brother, I assume not far off in age-wise, but had some of them had more experience in startups or with larger corporations before that?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Both of the founders, and there actually is a pretty decent age gap between us. Just kind of how it works. So they've had more time in the trenches, at least, especially when I kind of started taking over the mantle of CEO and whatnot than I had.
Yeah, no, that's always nice. That's good to know. And yeah, how dare I make these assumptions on? Yeah, but that's great. I mean, it's always great to have individuals like that. But obviously, also, I think the speed at which it sounds like as your company's grown over time, a lot of opportunities. It sounds like for those who are willing to step in and take on those challenges. So
absolutely
awesome. Well, for anybody who wants to find you, reach out to you, either to say hello or to learn more about Stub Group, and hopefully maybe have some of their own Google ad problems solved for them, how can they do so?
Yeah, for more info about Stub Group, best place is our website, stubgroup.com. Lots of info on there, some free resources as well you can check out. And then if you want to chat with me, probably LinkedIn, just search John Horn on there, and love to chat.
Great, sounds good. Thank you so much. And for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions, put them down below. We'd love to answer them. And hopefully we'll get John down in those comments too. So thank you very much, John.
And we'll see everyone in the next one.